Repeated cycle. I told y'all, repeated cycle. And I'm gonna play some. And I want y'all to understand about these Ashkenazi Jews. The Khazarians caught up on the Asiatic side, on the Asian side. They caught up on the Asian side over there. Ashkenazi Jew. Everybody on the Trump administration. I go play that video too, and just let you hear this shit. Y'all need to hear what's going on, man. Ashkenazi Jews. The whole administration from day one, Ashkenazi Jews, all of them. Coming up out of water, Khazari. I'm trying to tell you what's going on. Ashkenazi Jews.
Work for the next hour from 9 to 10 p.m.
We're going to treat this motherfucker up on a fair use. You know what I'm talking about? Then we're going to critique this on the fair use. So every now and then I might stop and say something just goddamn so they won't fuck with this video. But I want y'all to hear what they think about you. Now this the shit that goddamn, this 2006 video, but it goes back to 2001 because they're talking to a Jew, asking out a Jew, he gonna tell you how they feel about the world, how they run shit, how they run these bitches, how they got them, don't worry about no kickback, how they got judges and everything else, man. With Trump, why wasn't nobody at the goddamn work? Why nobody ain't show up for work? Well, not nobody. Why the Jews ain't show up for work? Huh?
Filling in for Pastor Bob, who covered for me last week. We're going to have a very, very interesting program tonight. I'm sure you're going to find it that way. I have a guest by the name of Rabbi A.B. Finkelstein. He's off the east coast of the United States, who's going to be joining me tonight. And we're going to be talking about authenticity of things in the world. Rabbi A.B. Finkelstein, as I said, a rabbi off the east coast of the United States. Are you there with me tonight?
Shalom, I am here.
Say, listen, I'm filling in here for Pastor Bob tonight, and I know we've never met, but I do have some very interesting questions for you. I think questions that I want to give you the opportunity to answer to, because there's a lot of rumors and conjecture that's taking place across this country relating to the Jewish population, okay?
Okay.
Now, you see, as being off the synagogue and a teacher of the Jewish race, because you are a race, aren't you?
Well, some say we're a race, some say we're a religion.
Yeah, well, what do you say?
Some say we are a race, some say we are a religion. There's no ethnicity. It's no ethnicity to Jew. They conspired and wrote those books of Moses over there, like I told y'all. It ain't no ethnicity to it. Ain't no bloodline to no fucking Jew except this story and this the point of origin of where it started at. Ain't no such thing as no motherfucking Jew except in your mind, because you let them play.
We're a little of each.
I can imagine, yeah. Now, I want to get into some hard topic here right away here. You know, you're a very pronounced person among your own people, and of course you're very aware that I don't like you or your race, okay? I'm sure you're aware of this, right?
That's your problem.
You see, there's a big topic that's going around on this 6 million Holocaust that took place during World War II of the Jews at Buchenwald, Auschwitz, and different places. A lot of information has come out here, Rabbi Finkelstein, that it's all myth and it's all conjecture. Could I have your view on this?
Well, everybody knows that the Jews never told a lie in the history of the world. However, whether it's 6 million or 600,000 or 60,000, it's just a number.
Oh, it's just a number, but the thing that I want to get to you at is that, you know, the 1934 World Encyclopedia stated that there was only 3.5 million Jews in all of Europe. How did 3.5 million Jews populate themselves to 6 million? This is the question I'd like answered.
Well, it's certainly a good question, there's no doubt about it. But the number, you know, numbers, what can I say about numbers? The important thing is that Jews have always been persecuted all throughout the history of the world forever and still are.
Well, the reason they're persecuted is because they're thieves, liars, and murderers, just like it's stated in the book of John 8:44. Yet
That's Bible stuff.
you're a lying Jew is what you are. You're a lying Jew.
You could say that, but even when we lie, we tell the truth.
You know, this is very ironic because, you know, I never thought that I would get anyone that had the nerve to join me on a broadcast like this live. And you know, I just got off a program with a retired colonel, a very highly decorated colonel, on my last broadcast, my original broadcast here, Rabbi Finkelstein. And we got into the banking aspect of the money in this country. Now, everybody, a lot of people who have studied banking and economics, they know that the Federal Reserve Banking Corporation is a private Jewish bank. Is this true?
Well, yes and no.
Well, what part is yes?
Well, it's a banking institution, that's for sure.
You see, the thing that I don't like about this is that the Jews never knew what hard work was, and they never had. And besides, you know, this is the nice part about it. You Jews are just Christ murderers anyway.
Well, that's true. We didn't murder him, but he was Jewish too.
Oh, no, he was Almighty Yahweh, God in the flesh body. That's the problem you got.
Well, we tell all the Goyim that they worship a Jew and they believe it, so what's the difference?
And now that you brought up the Goyim, let's talk about that. In other words, the Goyim, correct me if I'm wrong, I know you will. Rabbi Finkelstein, a Goyim is any person who isn't a Jew. A Goyim is classified as cattle or an animal. Is this correct?
Well, they are cattle because we're the chosen people.
Well, yeah, you're chosen for fertilizer. That's what you're chosen for. You know, this is what the book of Enoch, the patriarch, even Yahweh in a flesh body said that all of you Jews, the descendants of Cain, are going to perish for the evil that you have done in this world. You are the destroyers and the incineraries of the world, are you not?
I'll agree with that.
But you see, the thing that really bothers me, and not bothers me to the extent of losing sleep over people like you, is that all wars have been created by Jewry. They've been all set up to gain, as a monetary gain. Wouldn't you agree?
It's the greatest game in the world to make some shekels.
Now, let me ask you this. You know, there's so much things being talked about with George Bush in the White House. Let me have your opinion, first of all, about George Bush in the White House.
He's a good Goyim.
He's a good Goyim. Good for...
Boy, he takes his orders from Ariel over there, and he tells them what to do, and he does it like a good Goyim.
Would you agree that when the Balfour Declaration was signed in England, and the Jews were taken to Palestine, the land of Palestine, would you agree or disagree that there's actually more killing and there's been as much slaughter in Palestine by the Jews slaughtering and killing the Palestinians as there are of the Iraqi people being butchered in the last 12 years?
Well, who counts? But once in a while, you gotta thin out the herd. When you own the herd, you gotta thin out the herd.
I see. That's the philosophy of making money and staying alive and staying ahead. Is this right? Now, I'd like to...
You take that Iraq business over there. We got the white Goyim fighting the Arab Goyim, and they're killing each other, and we're making a lot of money, and we get the oil, and we get the interest. The most important thing is the interest on all the shekels that we loan both sides.
You mean usury?
That's right. You call it usually.
Now, you know, there's a book out that you read, Rabbi Finkelstein, called the Talmud. Now, the Talmud refers to Christ as his mother was a whore, and he was a bastardized son of a Roman soldier. Is this what's being taught in the synagogues?
Well, every good Jew knows that.
But you see, the reason that I wanted to ask you this is that, you know, you just said a little while ago that he was a Jew. And now you say every Jew knows that he was the son of a Roman soldier and that his mother was a prostitute.
Well, that was a long time ago. Who knows what was said back then?
Yeah, I guess that's right. That's absolute right. You know, we're having a real bad problem in our country right now. There's a lot of outsourcing of jobs and deindustrialization of this country. You know, the 7 Jew banking families that took over control of the money in America in 1913 was the Rothschilds of London, Israel Schiff of Italy, Kuhn and Loeb of Germany, the Warburgs of Hamburg, Lehman Brothers of New York, Goldman Sachs of New York, and the Rockefellers of New York. A lot of people, they don't realize and know that these 7 Jewish families actually control all the money and have controlled the money in this country since 1913. I know you're aware of this.
Right?
Now, in doing so, I mean, that makes a pretty big purse, doesn't it?
Listen, you know, the goyim are the schleppers. You know, they do all the work. That's what they want to do. They want to work. They always want jobs, so we give them jobs to work. The Jews don't work.
No, Jews don't work, and you're absolutely true. I want to get back to this Holocaust, and I want to get back to the Holocaust survivors, you know. It's to the point here, Rabbi Finkelstein, where there's more Holocaust survivors getting money, getting payments, financial payments, than there were Holocaust people who died, allegedly among the Jews. Where did all these people come from?
Well, again, you know, they have the evidence, they have the proof that they were there in the Holocaust, and so they're entitled to some money.
So in other words, you Jews say 6 million were killed in the concentration camps, and yet there's almost 6 million that are still receiving funds from Germany and other funding, and that's 12 million. Now, how does 12 million come out of 3 million?
Listen, again, the numbers, you know, you keep arguing about the numbers. The bottom line is that the Jews are entitled because we've been persecuted for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and so we're entitled. Even 100 years from now, there'll be people collecting money on the Holocaust because of that lousy boy Hitler over there. He was a bad boy.
Now, let me ask you a question about this, because this is very important. You know, we've gotten into a lot of very interesting information. We're going to get into more here in the very near future, but Rabbi Finkelstein, this country, the United States of America, is in real deep trouble right now financially, and I kind of want to know what you're telling the other Jews in that, in regards to, because I know Jews don't have any loyalty to nothing but gold and silver, especially gold. What are the synagogues teaching the Jews in America today as to the course of where this country is heading?
Well, it's like this. You know, America, it served its purpose for us for a while. We made a lot of shekels here. We made a lot of interest off the shekels. But we can get cheaper labor in China. We can get cheaper labor in India. Why should we pay the white race goyim here in America any money when we can make a better deal over there? It's all about shekels.
You know, I want to get into that about shekels and interest and everything, and this is very interesting that you bring it up, because I noticed that there's a lot of investment by Jewish financiers into Asia, most parts of Asia. Now, I also know that Jewry is an Asiatic race. Is this correct?
Well, we're really all over the world, but yeah, I guess you could say we started in Asia.
Yes, that's right. Now, the Hebrews did not start there, and the Israelites didn't start there. You really have no bearing to be in the Hebrews or the Israelites. You are not the dispersed nations, plural, of the tribes of Jacob, who were surnamed Israel. Actually, the con game that you have brought on to this country and the world for many years, and it's been a good con, it's been a good con game, is is that you're allegedly God's chosen people.
We are God's chosen people. It's just that most Jews don't like to admit it, but our God is Lucifer.
Your God is gold.
Well, that's what we like, is lots of gold, lots of shekels, some American Express cards. You know, we like to spend, we like to have a good time.
God's chosen people.
We are God's chosen people. It's just that most Jews don't like to admit it, but our God is Lucifer.
Your God is gold.
Well, that's what we like, is lots of gold, lots of shekels, some American Express cards. You know, we like to spend, we like to have a good time. We let the Goyim do the work, and we have a party.
Oh, in other words, free foreign aid, free housing, free food, and you just let the other races be your Goyim cattle slaves. Is this correct?
That's what they want, so we let them be that.
And this is what's coming and planned in this country too, isn't it? The United States.
Well, this country here, we're going to brown this country up. We're bringing all the Mexicans and all the Hispanics across the border. They're interbreeding, especially with a lot of the white women, the shiksas as we call them. And they're interbreeding with them. Pretty soon there won't be a white race, so they'll be all brown.
And talking about race, you are a race, Rabbi Finkelstein, but you are a Heinz 57 mongrel race of Asiatic blood. Is this correct?
Well, there's Jews everywhere in the world. We interbreed.
That nigga said a Mongol race of Asiatic blood. I'm telling you, these Europeans are. Who behind this shit now? Y'all in this?
With all the good-looking women in every country we...
Rabbi Finkelstein, but you are a Heinz 57 mongrel race of Asiatic blood. Is this correct?
Well, there's Jews everywhere in the world. We interbreed with all the good-looking women in every country we go into. All the good-looking women, all they care about is we buy them a few diamonds. Not that they're worth anything. We mark that industry up real big. If the truth be known, we have so many diamonds that if we ever turn loose the diamonds we have, you can buy them for the same price as a dozen roses. But the women, they like the diamonds. They like the furs. So we give them the diamonds and the furs. And we make an appointment with them and we have sex with them. And sometimes we marry them. It doesn't matter because when we want a divorce, we just go to one of our fellow Jew judges and get the divorce. We have a Jew lawyer. She's going to hire a Jew lawyer. Yeah, she's not going to make any shekels, but she can try.
Let me ask you this. This is very interesting. This war in Iraq that took place after the alleged towers of 2001, September 11, 2001, this alleged war, it got very interesting. There were really no Jews in them towers. Can you explain that?
Well, spiritually, there were a lot of Jews in the towers. A lot of Jews died in those towers, spiritually.
Oh, I see. Well, there's 3,000 Jews were not at work that day in those towers. That just gave a lot of people have the impression that the Jewish population out there in New York, was aware that something was going to happen and they didn't show up for work that day.
Yeah, we got a call from the Kahilla that Ariel and some of the boys in the Mossad, they got together and they wired up the buildings and they took them down. It was going to be a hard thing to take them down anyway because we wanted to build...
Something was going to happen and they didn't show up for work that day.
Yeah, we got a call from the Kahilla that Ariel and some of the boys in the Mossad, they got together and they wired up the buildings and they took them down. It was going to be a hard thing to take them down anyway because we wanted to build some new structures and the buildings were getting old and it was time to bring them down. This way, we make some shekels by destroying the building. Old Silverman, who's a good friend of mine there, Larry, he got a twofer. He got a 2-for-1 there and he doubled the insurance magically just 3 months before it happened. And then he got a 2-for hit on it, so he made like 4 times his money. I should have been in on the deal. He asked me, but I said, oh, I don't know. Let me think about it. Building. Old Silverman, who's a good friend of mine there, they got together and they wired up the buildings and they took them down. It was going to be a hard thing to take them down anyway because we wanted to build some new structures and the buildings were getting old and it was time to bring them down. This way, we make some shekels by destroying the building. Old Silverman, who's a good friend of mine there, Larry, he got a two-for. He got a 2-for-1 there and he doubled the insurance magically just 3 months before it happened. And then he got a 2-for hit on it, so he made like 4 times his money. I should have been in on the deal. He asked me, but I said, oh, I don't know, let me think about it. It took a little too long for me to think about it, and he pulled the plug, he pulled it, as they say, and so the buildings come down. But at least I got in on the market, and I was short American Airlines, I was short United Airlines, I was short Lloyd's of London Insurance Company because they took a big hit. Allianz Insurance Company, I was short them. So I made a few shekels.
Well, let me ask you this. You know, there's a lot of speculation here. You know, I know that the Jews are thieves and liars of any moral society. Now, I want to thank you for coming on tonight and talking to me because I also know that there's no conscience among Jewry. And Rabbi Finkelstein, it doesn't matter what I say to you, it's going to bounce off you like water off a duck's back, right?
Well, Jews always feel guilt. We've always felt the guilt. We have a conscience.
The only conscience you have is when you can't steal all the money from anyone or any country.
Well, you're hitting a little close to home, but you're correct.
Now, on a lot of food labels, there's a U and a K. And this U and K on all food labels, for example, that are sold in supermarkets, etc., is this a Jewish tax that is paid to rabbis like you all over the United States? Is that another con job at the expense of the goyim, the masses who purchase the product?
Well, I didn't get in on that one, but yeah, it's a lot of other rabbi groups, they tax the food, and you could call it a tax. You're entitled to make money where you can make money. If nobody stops you, you make the money. And, but, the goyim, they're the cattle. The white race out there, they're the goyim, they're the cattle. And so, if we want to make money off of feeding our cattle, who's to say that that's wrong?
Well, let me ask you, what's the greatest fear of the people that you have in your syndicate synagogue, Rabbi Finkelstein? What is the greatest fear that the Jews in mass are facing on the East Coast?
Well, the worst thing is if we hang around, our old buddy up there in the Federal Reserve, Alan, he's going to pull the plug on this U.S. dollar. And we want to make sure that we're into Swiss francs or into euros or Japanese yen or something before that happens. We'll get the call from the Kahilla. We're liquidating now, little by little. A couple of other goyim that they're good, bought and paid for Shabbos goy. The Bill Gates fella from the computer place and the Warren Buffett. Both of them, they got out of U.S. dollars about a year ago or so. We told them, to liquidate and, but we're still hanging on there. So we made a little extra interest since they were out of the market. They got a lot of shekels themselves.
I see where you Jews have finally taken over the National Rifle Association. A Jewess by the name of Sandra Froman is now president of the National Rifle Association.
Well, yeah, but we took over the NRA a long time ago. Charlton Heston, it's not known so much, but yeah, he's a nice Jewish boy. We let him play Moses in the movies back in the 50s. We took the NRA over long ago. All the organizations out there, the Jew controls it. Everybody knows that.
I've read in your Talmud where it says that if you're to have any opposition, you will control that opposition.
Well, of course, the smartest thing is to own both sides of every game.
But
that way you know the outcome. We own the Republicans, we own the Democrats. We got a lot of good Jewish boys in on both of them, and the rest of them are good, bought and paid for Shabbos Goy, and we throw a few shekels into their campaign contributions that we give them in our Jewish lobby in Israel, and they, they take the money and they do what we want so that we can make some shekels. If nobody stops it, who's to say we shouldn't be doing it? Don't you wish you could do it? You're not doing it. We're doing it.
Yeah, but you're thieves and liars. You're all thieves and liars, just like it says in St. John 8:44. But you see, Rabbi Finkelstein, you don't own me, and you don't control me, and you don't control the racial identity movement in this country, who really understands to a varying degree of what you people are and what you've done.
Well, that's true. You're one of those goyim out there that we don't control. But I'll tell you a little something else. We all respect you for what you do, because at least you stand up for your race. The rest of them out there, they're all a bunch of cowards, all the white race goyim, all the men. The most of them these days, they carry places and they wear earrings. They're no wonder the white girls come to us, all the shiksas.
I had a conversation here not long ago with an individual, and I got into the feminist homosexual agenda in the United States, and I told them that actually the sexist homosexual agenda was actually created and funded by Jewry, by the Jews of the United States. Well, you want to discuss on that?
Yeah, we got that going back in the early 1900s. The women's rights movement, we started off. See, when you gotta have a game and you got a bigger goal, you can't go in like a Sherman tank going through something. You gotta start a little small. And so we said, hey, how about you get equal pay for equal work? And women have the right to vote. And everybody bought into that. And we started with the women because it's hard to get the men. The women are the weakest sex, as we know from that old Adam and Eve story of yours. But at any rate, we got the women going. And now look at all the women. Most all of them around the world, especially here in America, they got short hair. They got a schwarzer for a boyfriend. They got a lesbian lover. They're married by the time they're 40, but then they can't have too many little children themselves because they've already ruined those years chasing the almighty gold, the dollar, the shekel, and so they're going to wind up a bunch of old maids because nobody wants them. But the bottom line is that the real good-looking ones, we take them to Hollywood that we own, and we make them big.
I see. Well, Rabbi Finkelstein, I was talking to you about the U's and the K's that's on the food boxes and the food sources. And the thing that I want is that this is a private Jewish tax that people unsuspectedly are paying, aren't they?
Well, some know, some don't, but they better pay, because if they don't pay, they don't get the item. And the rabbis need to make some shekels too.
I was talking to a person who journeyed over to Israel. And the United States has always been known as the land of milk and honey. They say over there, the United States is a land of milk and money. Would you like to relate to that?
Well, what's in a saying? What can I say? A lot of people here in America, they still keep screaming about these 55 guys that they say formed the country a couple of hundred years ago. But the bottom line is that the Jews formed the country. We came over here. 1492 was that terrible year that we got kicked out of Spain. And
1492 was a terrible year. They got kicked out of Spain. 1492 was the first year that the globe was introduced to the motherfucking world. Y'all gotta think outside the box, man. They was kicked out of Spain. And so y'all went somewhere to become Spaniards. So they take on all identities. They take on all identities, whatever they want to be. I'm trying to tell you what's going on.
Columbus, who was a Jew, still keeps screaming about these 55 guys that they say formed the country a couple of hundred years ago. But the bottom line is that the Jews formed the country. We came over here. 1492 was that terrible year that we got kicked out of Spain. And Columbus, who was a Jew, he found it out to take us over here. We were going to set up in Rio, and then we decided to go to New York, because New York has a little bit better weather, not so many mosquitoes. It was a little bit better. So we set up in New York, and we make the money.
I was going to ask you, this war in Iraq, there's a lot of Jew money invested in this war, isn't there?
Well, we have
I told you when it took Iraq, put that goddamn U.S. embassy over there, now they working on Iran. Slowly but slowly gonna wipe everything out. Ashkenazis, motherfucking Jews, nigga. All because of a book of Moses that was written by them and made up. No such ethnicity as a goddamn Jew. And this sound like a replay right here. And then they gonna put it, and then he just told you, Larry Silverstein put terroristic insurance on them buildings 2 months before time and got paid double. He just told you, these motherfuckers not hiding this shit from you niggas. You niggas blind about all this motherfucking rap shit and these hoes on these poles. You better get your ass off this North Pole and get straight, niggas.
Ammunition companies, we have all the aircraft companies, all the gun manufacturers, all the supplies. We're making a lot of money. And George Bush is a good goyim. He borrows it right from the Federal Reserve, and then he has to tax the people to pay back the interest, because the most important part of a loan is the interest. You must pay back the interest. We're not concerned with the principal, but the interest has to keep going on. And we've done pretty well with Iraq so far. We've got about $300 billion or so. And but this war here is going to go on for another 30 years, as George said. We told him to keep it quiet and shut up and don't act like a big shot. But he kept talking. And so, but this war is going to go on for another 30 years. We're going to go into maybe 60 countries or so. We're going to be drafting all the goyim here soon. The men, the women. The women, they don't want to sit home and have families anyway. They'd rather have a career. That's a nice, exciting thing for a woman to put on a green suit and go over there and shoot people and get shot at. Must be exciting to them. So, we're making a lot of money.
You know, this is very interesting.
Just like they got their heads on the chopping block now. Got them United States of American troops over there. My nigga, I know mama goddamn got some cheering over there. Sisters, cousins, aunties. Now they over there sitting ducks, cause they gonna bust out. Why the fuck Obama ain't never bring the troops home? Y'all don't pay attention to this shit. This whole campaign won't bring troops home. End up sending 30,000 more to the Middle East. And then they gonna be harvested. When they got there and get their body, they gonna get their organs and goddamn have feast and do the fuck they wanna do with them, like they've been doing the whole time. Man. Damn, well. Let's get it.
Rabbi Finkelstein, it's really good talking to you, and I'm sure the listening audience here on the Turner Radio network is listening very intently, because a lot of things have been a little exposed, some more exposed than others. But, you know, at least you're coming out and you're telling the truth. And, you know, you say, you know, we got $300 billion tied up in Iraq with interest. And what's 1,700?
$300 billion. See, they rather you buy a house and just pay the interest on it. So they still own it, have the property, you just pay your interest. So they own and collect interest. That's how the U.S. built, boy. Been telling y'all this shit goddamn for motherfucking 10, 11 years. This sounds like a goddamn replay of what's going on right now today. Like I told y'all. But unfair the one crazy though. See, want me to be on some bullshit now. I got my shit ducked off my research, what I've been doing. I'm trying to show you how to lay this bitch down where you can see these hoes. Cause this bitch most definitely flat. These most definitely playing a wicked ass game. Cause there ain't no such thing as no motherfucking Jew by bloodline. They sit right over there in Asia and wrote this shit and came up with this shit. He heard what he said about goddamn Jesus. Oh, his mama was a hoe. She was Roman. They don't like Romans. Romans are the Northerners, are the Anglo-Saxons. It's a different thing. Different thing. These, man, all right.
100 to 3,000 dead bodies compared to how much money you made. More exposed than others, but at least you're coming out and you're telling the truth. And you state, we got 300 billion tied up in Iraq with interest. And what's 1,700 to 3,000 dead bodies compared to how much money you made?
Well, but you got to thin out the herd once in a while. Otherwise, the herds get too big. And if the herds get too big, they eat up all the resources. So you got to thin out the herd once in a while. We call it a theater of war because it's amusing to us Jews to see our two biggest enemies, the white race and the Arab race, the seed of the woman. It's amusing to us to see them kill each other, and we make a lot of money off it. Believe me, I've had a lot of laughs at the synagogue with that.
Well, we got a break here coming up in about a minute, I believe, and you're listening to the John 844 program of Pastor Bob entitled The Lying Jews on the Turner Radio Network. I'm James Wickstrom, a teacher of Yahweh, and as a guest on Pastor Bob's program tonight is Rabbi A.B. Finkelstein on the East Coast of the United States. We're going to be coming back to you after this break. Just hold your chair and hold your place. We'll be back in just one moment. I'd like to welcome you back for the second half of Pastor Bob's broadcast tonight on the Turner Radio Network on John 844. I'm James Wickstrom, a teacher of Yahweh, sitting in for Bob tonight. I wanted to thank him for covering for me last week a broadcast, The Lying Jews. Very interesting that I have one on here with no conscience, but he's coming up and at least telling the truth to what's going on in the country, is Rabbi A.B. Finkelstein from the East Coast of the United States. Rabbi Finkelstein, are you still there?
I am here, and remember, there's never been a Jew in the history of the world that ever told a lie. We always tell the truth.
Yes, I see. I know what your truth is. Your truth to you is a lie to us, but that's fine. I'd like to get into the situation that took place years ago. I know you're well aware of it. It was called the Bolshevik Revolution over in Christian Russia.
Bolsheviks. The Bolsheviks.
It's been reported here on congressional documents in the United States, and it's in many places now, that actually it was Jews who financed the Bolsheviks' Jew Communist Revolution against the Tsar. Would you comment on that?
Well, it was really the Rothschild family that financed it because they got all the shekels. Boy, let me tell you, they got the shekels. When the old man died in 1812, he owned half of all the known wealth in the world. Oy vey! The rest of us got to chop up the rest of it. But anyway, we started the Bolshevik Revolution there because you might as well start with taking over the biggest country in the world, which was Russia, and we had the help to murder the Tsar from his cousins, the Kaiser, and the King and Queen of England, and so they helped us, and they gave us all the inside information that we needed to take the country over, and but we drained that country pretty well. There's not a lot left, and so we look for greener pastures, and we've been doing real good here in America for a long time, but it's time to do something else, so we're going to build up China and India, and we'll just let America sink into the desert because no one really cares about America anymore. It's, there's not a lot of shekels to be made anymore. As they say, you can't get blood out of a stone, and we've got as much blood out of this stone as we're going to get.
It's interesting because I'm glad you brought that up because this country is in great despair here. I'd like to know, was very crafty on your Kahila and the main sources of Jewish power, financial and political power, how they totally control most of the federal agencies in the District of Columbia.
Well, it's very simple. You know, the Kehillah, that's the inside for us rabbis. We know how to get the word out to every Jew in the world that goes to a synagogue within 45 minutes. All the other presses, the news media, the television, the radio, the magazines, we own all those anyway, so it trickles down. But by the time most of the masses get it, it's too late to make any decision. We already made the decision for them.
You know, it's interesting, with trouble looming on the horizon in the United States, you know, there's a lot of white people like me, of European ancestry, who don't really know what's going on. And there's a large percentage of Jews in this country who really don't know what's going on either. They're going to be cannon fodder too, aren't they?
There's a few at the bottom that don't go to the synagogue and they don't know, but they know, they hear that, you know, at parties we discuss it, you know, how we're going to wipe out the white race and wipe out the Arab race, actually let them wipe out each other and make a lot of money. That's pretty smart. You know, us Jews, we're pretty smart guys.
I know.
And eventually we'll get all the rest of the countries around the world, they'll wipe each other out, because us Jews, we're special. We're the chosen people, and we're the smartest people in the world, and we have always said down through the ages, we want a world of our own, and we're going to get it, and there's nothing any of the Goyim cattle are going to do to stop it. L'chaim.
So you see, it's very interesting that you should bring all of this up, because where do the blacks fit in? I know that you use them. They've been part of the Jewish Communist Party in the United States, a vast majority. What's going to be their end when this is all over?
Well, the Schwarzes, if the truth be known, came here with our father Lucifer 75,000 years ago when he lost that battle, only temporarily though, in the heavens, because we're on a comeback. We're the comeback kids if there ever was one. But all the Schwarzes, what can you say? You know, they got a good time step. They dance good. You know, a couple of them can sing. They make some nice barbecue. And they're real good for selling drugs, too, because they all love the drugs. And we make a lot of money off of selling the drugs. You do know that we control all the drug world and have since Rothschild got the opium wars in China going. We've been controlling the drugs ever since that. We let a few in here and there to make some money. And they get arrested and they go off to jail for that. But we make the big money. We're the wholesalers. We're the wholesalers of everything in the world.
You know, it's very interesting you should bring that up, because, you know, prior to Franklin Delano Roosevelt and his Eleanor, his first cousin, who is also a Jewess, actually, yes, they were both Jews. And it's very interesting, until they got in office, the Jews had control of the money, but they didn't have control or a good foothold in Washington, D.C., did they?
No, we had control since the Civil War. Rothschild, he backed both sides of the Civil War, and when the smoke cleared, he was getting shekels from both of them, lots of interest. They're never going to be able to pay back the war debt. We really control it then. Basically what we've been doing is consolidating. I'll tell you something about that Eleanor girl. She got a face that would stop a clock.
A train.
A train too.
Now, as we talk about conditions in this country, Rabbi Finkelstein, the people know that their standard of living it's not meticulously being destroyed now. It's coming by chunks. It's coming by large gouges at this time. Total industrial plants, automotive plants are being shut down. 1,500 to 3,000 in a plant are losing their livelihood. It's just a matter of time, isn't there?
Well, of course. But all they really ever had anyway, once you give up working for yourself and you work for somebody else, you're a slave to that person. What you're doing is actually, he's not paying you money, but all the labor that you're doing you're giving him a piece of the action. And when you give him a piece of the action, you're making him the rich guy, not you. So all we let them do is make a subsistence living. They could never afford to buy a house on their own. We got to give them a payment plan. Of course, we do them a favor, and so we collect a little interest for that, about 3 houses for every one that we sell them. But you have to be in business for yourself. If you're not in business for yourself, then you never have a chance to make any money. You're going to be a working stiff, a slave, a serf. You're a schlepper.
Well, Rabbi Finkelstein, you're very brazen tonight, and I'm really surprised at how truthful that you've been in answering a lot of my point-blank questions. Why is it hard for why do the Jews feel, or is this just a paranoid, schizophrenic feeling that everyone in this country is looking at them, want to do things to them and stuff like that?
Well, they better not look at us too hard or accuse us, because that's anti-Semitism. And if we catch you with anti-Semitism, we can throw a book.
Anti-Semitic. Throw the book at your head just for being anti-Semitic, for knowing the truth. For knowing the truth. Anti-Semitism. Yeah, because they done made your ass be Semitic through the language. Yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha. Remember, we control the court system. All the Jew judges, the Jew lawyers, the Jew prosecutors, and we wrote most of the law. Not us necessarily, but we pay our goyim in Washington, D.C., the Democrats and the Republicans. They sit around and we have them write up laws. We tell them what to do. They put it on the paper. We don't actually even do the work.
Well, you know, as we're on the Turner Radio Network here, this is one of the only live radio networks that actually 2 individuals that come from 2 opposite parts of this planet, you, Rabbi Finkelstein, and yours truly, James Wickstrom. You know, we are on 2 totally opposite sides of this planet, and both of us have 2 totally different wants and needs and desires against one another, and yet here we are, sitting here tonight live on the Turner Radio Network, discoursing about people, discoursing about things, being honest and truthful, and telling the truth to the masses. But you know, the masses have a hard time believing anything.
Well, we've done a great brainwashing job on them over the centuries, and especially the last few hundred years. We've just brainwashed them completely. They believe anything we tell them. And, you know, in the meantime, we have a lot of fun around Passover where we steal the children. And, you know, I know you know because I've heard it on your show before. I mean, we steal 100,000 to 300,000 children a year just here in this country. And we drain their blood and we mix it with the Passover bread. And then we throw the bodies into the slaughterhouses that we own. And we grind up all the bodies in the sausage and the hamburger. McDonald's is one of our favorite outlets. And the people, they eat it for breakfast. They eat their children for lunch. And, you know, us Jews, you know, we gotta do what we do. The most important thing to remember between you, Pastor Wickstrom, and me, Rabbi A.B. Finkelstein of New York, that we both have 2 fathers, and so that's why we look at the world in 2 different ways.
And we know that there's a massive collision that's going to take place between 2 forces, don't we?
Well, that's what your book says. Our book says that we're going to take over the world.
Well, I look at you...
You're doing a pretty good job right now.
Yes, you've done a pretty good job, but you know, there's quite an awakening coming. And my father, who's not your father, my father Yahweh, who isn't your father, of course, your father is talked about by my father in John 8:44, stating that your father was Satan and that you're the descendant of Cain, who was the first murderer. And you know that's true because you teach it in your synagogue.
Well, that's true, but it's not for you goyim to know. But right now it's too late. It's over for you white race. So that's why I'm speaking so honestly here, to bring it out into the open so that you can see it for what it is. You've been teaching the people good, but they don't wake up, do they? You don't get a lot of followers, do they? Because you know why? They're scared of us Jews, because they don't want to be called anti-Semites, and they believe that we're the chosen people, and so that's why we can do whatever we want to do, and we can get away with it because the white men are cowards, and we go to the synagogue all the time and have some Manischewitz and dance the Hava Nagila.
You know, it's interesting. I've told people for years and years, it's not that you Jews are hiding anything. You're coming right out on television, in the newspapers, on the radio, and you're telling the people exactly what you're going to do before you do it, and they're like they're brain dead.
Well, we did a good job with the public school system. We got you to put all of your children in there. You notice that the Jew doesn't put his children in there. They go to the Hebrew Academy, where we teach them the real things, and then they go to the synagogue and they learn the real important things. But we send your kids to the public school. We even have you tax yourself from your property so that you never own your property. And so if you don't make your property tax, we're going to take your property. You can bet on that. And we have you put your kid in a 12-year babysitting is about all it does, because you don't learn anything. And then by that time, the kids, they get to be teenagers, and then we give them the music. Not that we really want to call it music, because, that's not music. But they listen to that, and then they want to do what they want to do, and so we sell them drugs, and we make a lot of money off your children. Your children from cradle to grave. All we do is make money off of them. Your cattle, your goyim, the human cattle. Mazel tov.
You know, it's interesting. Yes, I know what you call us, but you know, you may call me Goyim, but I can call you devil, but you know I'm going to be calling you a good name because that's what you are.
Well, that's true.
Now, you see, Rabbi Finkelstein, in your synagogue out there in New York, do you have a lot of infighting with the other Jews, the Orthodox Jews and the other Jews? I mean, is there a lot of infighting for the money out there in New York? I've heard that there's a big inner war going on now with Jewry.
Well, we fight a little bit and we argue a little bit. Of course, that's the two most important things we do is complain and get the guilt. And so what we do, we're not really fighting among ourselves because we're both going to make a lot of money. It's just who's going to make a little more on this deal and who's going to make a little more on that deal. The bottom line, though, is we have the Goyim. The Goyim does all the work. The Goyim makes all the stuff. He sells it to us for pennies. We're the wholesalers. We're the middlemen. We mark it way up and sell it to the other Goyim on the retail side. There's an old saying in Yiddish that the reason that God made Gentiles is because somebody has to pay retail. It's not going to be the Jew for sure. The Jew doesn't pay retail. It's the Goyim that pays retail. We buy wholesale.
Well, that's very interesting. I understand that. But I also know the bloodletting. I know that on your Passover, which isn't mine, that a lot of little children do disappear, and I do know that, and I know a lot of police departments and agencies have been informed, but you're very open. You're very open tonight. I'm very surprised that you're talking about the bloodletting of the little children, that you put their blood in the matzah balls, and that you eat it on sacrifice on Passover.
Well, there was a Goyim that wrote a book about it back in the 30s. I forget his name at the moment. But anyway, he wrote the book. People didn't buy the book. People don't want to listen. We've been doing this for thousands and thousands of years, since down to Adam's time. We take the children of our enemy, which is the white.
That you're talking about the bloodletting of the little children, that you put their blood in the matzah balls, and that you eat it on sacrifice on Passover.
Well, there was a Goyim that wrote a book about it back in the 30s. I forget his name at the moment. But anyway, he wrote the book. People didn't buy the book. People don't want to listen. We've been doing this for thousands and thousands of years, since down to Adam's time. We take the children.
This was an old video when they be telling on themselves. I always be talking about these Ashkenazi Jews. This rabbi, that's a Rabbi Abraham Finkelstein. He the one got down put out about they putting in human meat in McDonald's. Remember that shit came out? All that shit came out of this interview right here, man. And it's just a repeat what Donald Trump got going on. Now they just trying to get deep off into Iran territory to take all the oil from the motherfuckers who put them on. They taking back over the Palestinians and shit. But it just sound funny because that nigga just keeping it real.
Of our enemy, which is the white race, and we bring them to the basements in the synagogues where we drain the blood and watch them die there. It's very similar to how we do the sacrifices that we do with the kosher butchering, and so we do that, and then we mix it with the Passover bread, and so we eat the blood of our enemies, and the bodies, we're not cannibals. So
we eat the blood of our enemies. You need to my damn calendar. Damn, like what I've been telling y'all all week long. What I've been telling y'all all week. So don't just be putting this shit out rather out no hat these motherfuckers.
That, and then we mix it with the Passover bread, and so we eat the blood of our enemies. And the bodies, we're not cannibals. So what we do is we take those, because we can make some shekels, and we give them to the slaughterhouses, and those are pounds and pounds and pounds of meat that we grind up in the sausage and the hamburger, and that's why.
You see what happened to all you soldiers? They harvesting their own soldiers. Why 3,000 Jews went at work when they knocked them buildings down and they put their insurance, everything I'm telling y'all 100, man. This kind of shit right here, this the kind of shit they watch out of there. And this is why people fuck with me, because I be having this shit in the cut.
We made those the most popular things, sausage for breakfast and hamburger for lunch. And so all the goyim out here are really eating the, we're not cannibals. So what we do is we take those, because we can make some shekels, and we give them to the slaughterhouses, and those are pounds and pounds and pounds of meat that we grind up in the sausage and the hamburger, and that's why we made those the most popular things, sausage for breakfast and hamburger for lunch. And so all the goyim out here are really eating the children. And even when we say this outright and tell you people, you don't believe it.
Hey,
so that's your problem.
You know, I've got a question, and yes, it is a problem. But you see, I've always wondered, how did you Jews ever get control of the i.e. Christian churches in this country? It's always baffled me to a varying degree, Rabbi Finkelstein. You know, you have your synagogue out there in New York on the East Coast, but I'm wondering, how did you ever totally get control of these Christian churches who at one time told their congregations to stay away from you Jews? How did that happen?
Well, you know, our father Lucifer, the number one thing of all the organizations out there on the earth that we would want to infiltrate.
Mind you, these the people that P. Diddy and all these people in the entertainment industry, everything motherfucker be trying to tell y'all about these motherfuckers. I told you I used to be a rap nigga when I first got here, Tam. I ain't going that route, my nigga. I sold my side of the trunk. I did it my way like Fred Astaire, like I supposed to. I don't supposed to go get tied up with that kind of shit there, man. Man, all them rough shit you know I don't. I'm supposed to do it like I do it, nigga. When I'm in Rome, I don't do the Roman do. I try to knock some hoes off so I can get down and hold my sport till my kingdom come. Yo, Illuminati to the death, to Illuminati pop up. Illuminati head boss, man. These folk crazy. These folk is crazy. But see, motherfucker won't listen. Look at PD, look at the whole infrastructure finna fall in. And that nigga Jay-Z, he the one goddamn put them folks on goddamn got it. Put them on goddamn J Prince. That's how he got in this position he in. He do all them seances, all that do us, that with Alex the Crawler, all that shit I've been telling y'all about all them years, about that nigga fucking Ursa and all that shit. All that shit I've been telling y'all about. Now, the infrastructure finna fall. I told you, I'm building some shit over here, ain't gonna never fall. I don't give a fuck. I just talk to one nigga, I talk to my motherfucking self. It's just a stress reliever to me to know all this shit and can't get it off, so I just be getting off. I won't have to walk around stressed out all the time. I just talk about this shit.
and take over of you goyim, obviously, would be the churches. So we attacked them first, and we attacked them most. And we infiltrated the Catholic Church right from the very beginning. Why do you think the Pope and all the cardinals and the bishops wear a yarmulke? The white race never figures it.
Remember I asked y'all that time? Remember I asked y'all that? What the fuck the Pope doing with that goddamn yarmulke on his head? They don't fuck with them Jews. Remember I asked y'all that shit? What the Pope doing with that Jewish yarmulke on his head? I told y'all the motherfuckers in the East controlling them North. The North is the goddamn. Alright, y'all get it.
So that's your problem.
You know, I've got a question, and I yes, it is a problem. But you see, I've always wondered.
And those are pounds and pounds and pounds of meat that we grind up in the sausage and the hamburger, and that's why we made those the most popular thing, sausage for breakfast and hamburger for lunch. And so all the goyim out here are really eating their children. And even when we say this outright and tell you people, you don't believe it. So that's your problem.
You know, I've got a question, and I yes, it is a problem. But you see, I've always wondered, how did you Jews ever get control of the i.e. Christian churches in this country? It's always baffled me to a varying degree, Rabbi Finkelstein. You know, you have your synagogue out there in New York on the East Coast, but I'm wondering, how did you ever totally get control of these Christian churches who at one time told their congregations to stay away from you Jews? How did that happen?
Well, you know, our father Lucifer, the number one thing of all the organizations out there on the earth that we would want to infiltrate and take over of you goyim, obviously would be the churches. So we attacked them first, and we attacked them most. And we infiltrated the Catholic Church right from the very beginning. Why do you think the Pope and all the cardinals and the bishops wear a yarmulke? The white race never figures this out. And so then we took all your books that had all your scriptures in there, and we burned them. And then we wrote them in Latin so that you couldn't understand them. But we understood Latin because we're Jews and we're smart and we're educated. But you goyim out there,
y'all research Latin. Come from the Romans spoke Latin. That's the Northerners. So we spoke that shit. We infiltrated that shit. Shit came out the east of the Asian continent, man. That nigga a baby of them goddamn Anglos. These them Persian motherfuckers that sit over there and made up all this motherfucking shit, and they just sit back and watch the world feed into their literature. And they let the white man do what he want to do. They just sit over there and let the North make up their globe. And they feed them the rocket engine, they feed them the ship of war, and they got to keep paying these motherfuckers right here, because these the motherfuckers that wrote the books of Moses and put this shit into play. Trying to tell y'all some real shit, man.
that we would want to infiltrate and take over of you goyim, obviously would be the churches. So we attacked them first, and we attacked them most. And we infiltrated the Catholic Church right from the very beginning. Why do you think the Pope and all the cardinals and the bishops wear a yarmulke? The white race never figures this out. And so then we took all your books that had all your scriptures in there, and we burned them. And then we wrote them in Latin so that you couldn't understand them. But we understood Latin because we're Jews and we're smart and we're educated. But you, goyim out there, you never teach yourself. You don't self-teach. You're always looking for somebody else to do it for you. So you wind up being schleppers all your life. And so anyway, 1,000 years later, when a bunch of the white race started to wake up in Europe, and they started to leave the Catholic Church, it was a terrible time because we weren't making as many shekels as we used to. So we had to put a stop to it. So the kings that we had in our hip pocket, just like the politicians in Washington, D.C. today, we paid them off to get you declared heretics so that they would crucify you and kill you. But there was too many of you, and the West was opening up, where the Jews opened up New York and Rio, and everybody started going west to the Americas. And so we had to come up with a plan B.
Everybody started going west to the Americas. Christopher Columbus headed west from Europe, and he ended up in, so where South America at? In the motherfucking west, nigga. See? Everything out, man, I got blueprints. I got this shit laid out for y'all, man. Just like I always do, I laid all this shit. Everything I do, I lay it out on the line for y'all, man. Well, cause, see, that's what I gotta do. That's the only way I'm able to goddamn be comfortable. Just putting this shit out here. That's the only way I'm be comfortable. I told y'all, when I jumped on this bitch in 2017, I said, I ain't coming about this bitch, New York gonna kill me. I'm on this hoe.
In Plan B, we formed the Jesuits. It was a nice boy, Ignatius Loyola, that he started the Jesuits, and so they decided to infiltrate all the Protestant churches out there, and as always, us Jews work our way to the top, and then we take over the money line, the shekel line, the most important line, the lifeline, the gold, and so we took that over. And so slowly but surely we teach the teachings, change them a little bit to where it's all run by the Catholic Church again, the Mother Church. It's your mother, but the Father Church is the synagogues in Israel and in the synagogues in New York.
You know, this is most interesting. There was a report just recently, a couple months ago here, Rabbi Finkelstein, of Ethiopic Jews in Israel. These are black Jews, and the Jews in Israel didn't want them there. And
your mother, but the Father Church is the...
So I'm saying, I go dig this shit up. The Ethiopian Jew. This where they got all their juice from. This where they got all their motherfuckers. This where they knock off the Ethiopia. This where they knock off the Ethiopians, and they got them, tied them into them Canaanites in their book and cursed all of them, and then gave them a Semitic language and told them their dad's name was Sam, and just said fuck Ham and gave Ham to Abram. Long story short, that's how it go.
Synagogues in Israel and in the synagogue, most important line, the lifeline, the gold, and so we took that over. And so slowly but surely we teach the teachings, change them a little bit to where it's all run by the Catholic Church again, the Mother Church. It's your mother, but the Father Church is the synagogues in Israel and in the synagogues in New York.
you know, this is most interesting. There was a report just recently, a couple months ago here, Rabbi Finkelstein, of Ethiopic Jews in Israel. These are black Jews, and the Jews in Israel didn't want them there. And the Ethiopian, the black Jew, said, "Oh no, we're Jews. We belong here too." Oh, how does this all fit in? Well, how are these blacks Jews and the Jews over in Israel didn't want them? Was they kind of like a disgrace or what?
Well, who wants a bunch of Schwarzes in your land? You don't want the Schwarzes in there. There are some rabbis that went down to Ethiopia and they said, "Oh, we'd like to be Jews too." We laughed, but we said, "Okay, pay us a few dollars and we'll teach you how to be a Jew." So there was a few rabbis that made some money there in Ethiopia, but every Jew knows that a Schwarzer can never be a Jew, and we don't want them dirtying up the neighborhood over in Israel. We give them neighborhoods here in America. We give them white women to mate with, to destroy both races, and Gazai, Gazel, Gavel, Gahaya. What can I say?
Well, that's, in other words, it's like Elizabeth
knows that a Schwarzer can never be a Jew, and we don't want them dirty. It's a few dollars, and we'll teach you how to be a Jew. So there was a few rabbis that made some money there in Ethiopia, but every Jew knows that a Schwarzer can never be a Jew, and we don't want them dirtying up the neighborhood over in Israel. We give them neighborhoods here in America. We give them white women to mate with, to destroy both races, and Gazai, Gazel, Gavel, Gahaya. What can I say?
Well, that's, in other words, it's like Elizabeth Taylor now. She was a white woman, and yet she said she took on the ways of Jewry. How does this fit in?
Well, she married a nice little Jewish boy named Eddie Fisher, and they had a daughter named Carrie Fisher, and so she donates a lot of money to the synagogue, She's a good goyim shiksa, and she thinks she's Jewish. She can think what she wants. Hopefully that she'll give a lot of...
You heard what that nigga said about Elizabeth Taylor? These black motherfuckers love Elizabeth Taylor. Oh, Elizabeth Taylor, Liz Taylor, Elizabeth Taylor. I want Miss Elizabeth Taylor cologne and perfume and Elizabeth. You heard what he gave a fuck about Elizabeth Taylor? Not a motherfucking thing.
Money to our synagogue when she dies, which should be soon because she doesn't look like she's in too good a health.
Rabbi Finkelstein, we're coming down on time here, but I wanted to get into this because, you know, you and I are at war. The war actually is between the white race, the children of Seth, against the children of Cain, of which you are. And we know that it's been written in the Aramaic and in all the ancient texts, you know this as well as I, that only one race is going to survive on the face of this earth, and you know it's the white race.
Well, that's what your book says. Our book, the Talmud, says we're going to rule, and we're going to have a world of our own, and we're going to go out into space, and we're going to have a...
Now you see how dumb both of them sound? The white race gonna prevail. The Jew is gonna prevail. Them Northeasterners can't prevail over us, and nigga, we are the dominant gene. That's why we are the science projects to these motherfuckers. All we gotta do is cut these hoes loose, man. Stop going to work for a week and see how we shut this bitch down and get some shit started around this bitch.
war with your father, and we're going to win this time.
Well, that's going to be most interesting, but until then...
We gonna be the last ones, then they can get rid of it, they got rid of it. All this robot shit, all this bullshit about genetics, that was all this shit about. Genocide.
The masses continue to awaken in many aspects in this country and in white Europe. You know, all of Rothschild's banks control the white nations and have perverted the nations. Well, it amazes me how you penetrated into the federal agencies like the FBI and the National Security Agency, and how you have all these blockers and protectors in that.
It's very easy to take over a government when you're a bank, because the government has to borrow money from the bank, and once they borrow money, as it says even in your books, as it says in ours, who borrows is slave to the lender. And so this government here in America is slave to the Federal Reserve System, which is Rothschild's bank, plus a few of those other Jews who make a few shekels off of it. And the politicians that we put in charge, they all take bribes. They're all a bunch of toilets. They like to drink, and they like to take the drugs, and they like to do the Fagala thing with the Fagalas. So that's what they do, and it's very easy to control the government. The hardest thing was penetrating the churches, because there used to be a few good preachers in there, but over time, as us Jews, we're so smart, we're the chosen people, we always infiltrate and take over everything, and everything that there is out there today, we own and we control.
I'd like to ask you this question before we get off the air. We've got about 2 minutes. A point-blank question. Is communism Jewish?
Of course. Karl Marx, Moses Mordecai Levy, who had a couple of grandfathers that were Jewish. He's the one who created it, along with Engels. He was another nice Jewish boy. And we implemented it and got that started in Russia. It was a great bill of goods to sell the masses. We tell them, hey, you're here at the bottom. How would you like to be equal? Everybody be equal. They thought they were going to come up, but we brought the rich ones down to their level, and we took all the money, and we run it, and they're all a bunch of schleppers, and we make the shekels, and we're the masters of the world, and all the goyim are just human cattle.
Well, Rabbi Finkelstein, I know that all of you Jews are going to die. It's written by Yahweh. I'm glad you got on here and told the truth to the listening audience. You've been listening to John 844, Pastor Bob's program. I'm setting in for him. I'm James Wickstrom, a teacher of Yahweh. Our program tonight, The Lying Jew. Stay tuned for the Turner Radio Network and more truth that's coming out. Pastor Bob will be back with you next Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Until then, Yahweh bless.
See what I'm talking about? I told I don't play. I'm gonna go get it for y'all, man. know what I did? I'm gonna show the Trump line. I'm gonna listen to the Trump line though. What y'all got going on? I just be chilling, man. Victoria Morton get dropped the ball in that Middle East, bro. They told me. That's all they give a fuck. They don't give a fuck about them in the first 5 books. They don't give a fuck about that because they got their own thing going in back. I told you, they fuck with Lucifer. They put this shit out there for the world for y'all to bow down to this shit. They wrote the religions for y'all niggas to bow down to, man. Real talk. Let me go in here. You get this right here like this. Since we on some shit like this, then I think I'm gonna run that goddamn mall. How they rob Fort Knox. I like to hear see, it's good when you hear it from the horse's mouth. See, when you hear it from the horse's mouth and niggas put illustrations up for you, see, this kind of shit you can't deny, man. That's why when you see me playing receipts and getting them over there, I get out there and cuss motherfucker and all that shit. I just fall back and just play receipts and let them tell on themselves. Let them explain what I got going on for themselves. That's why I like to listen to them, because they don't tell on themselves. But that was a real good interview. That's how we found out about the McDonald's shit. Now these all want to play it. Let me see how loud this is. Let's see how loud this is. Unplug this. Let's see how loud this is. You heard that motherfucker say 3,000 motherfucking Jews ain't sure for work on Twin Tower Day. You heard him say Larry Silverstein goddamn put terroristic insurance on that motherfucker 2-3 months early because they know they finna bring them buildings down. Did y'all hear all that shit? That nigga told y'all, I told y'all about that plastic ass lettuce they was selling. I showed y'all they was over there making lettuce. They ain't got no farm. They had farm. Why would they be making plastic lettuce and all that shit? Cause we got the land. Y'all still don't understand, man. This Lady Gaga right here. Hold on, let me show y'all this bitch. I've been telling niggas for years about this motherfucker.
Vice Chairman, Trump Victory Committee, Finance Vice Chairman, Trump Presidential Inaugural Committee.
Let me show y'all this bitch.
It's real.
Let's get it. I'm talking about.
Here's the definition of androgynous. Partly male and partly female in appearance, of indeterminate sex.
The bopperman. Oh, this is what I started all the video. Look.
Damn, what's all that? What's all that? You see what I'm saying? Androgynous. Your gender. Androgynous.
They go crazy. Crowd go crazy when they see this bitch dick.
Obama. You know, no reparations. You know, Lady Gaga bitch. Yeah, Obama on Lady Gaga bitch.
Michael Aboud, Communications Coordinator, Donald J. Trump for President.
Donald J. Trump for President. Let's see who all bags Donald J. Trump for President. Since y'all don't believe me when I say this nigga is a Ashkenazi Jew. And he's a German. And his mom and dad was ran with a little Ku Klux Klan. Come on, let's get it.
Sephardic Jew. Paul Eschleitner, Chairman, Supervisory Board, Deutsche Bank, Donald Trump's largest lender, Ashkenazi Jew. Miriam Adelson, endorser, Donald J. Trump for President, donor, Future 45-back, Finance Vice Chairman, Trump Presidential Inaugural Committee, Ashkenazi Jew. Sheldon Adelson, endorser, Donald J. Trump for President, donor, Future 45-back, Finance Vice Chairman, Trump Presidential Inaugural Committee, Ashkenazi Jew. Paul Atkins, member, President Trump's Strategic and Policy Forum, Ashkenazi Jew. Ryan Ballard, Finance Vice Chairman, Trump Presidential Inaugural Committee, Ashkenazi Jew. Elliot Brody, Vice Chairman, Trump Victory
Then he got paid 2 times because it was 2 attacks. But it was 3 buildings that fell. Look at her.
Committee member, Trump
I'm gonna run it back.
Ashkenazi Jew. Michael Cohen,
Michael Cohen.
President and Special Counsel.
The one that got that lawyer will mute that. All right, we'll run it back. Hey, y'all listen to this shit.
Sephardic Jew. Paul Eschleitner, Chairman, Supervisory Board, Deutsche Bank, Donald Trump's largest lender, Ashkenazi Jew.
Donald Trump, largest lender. This is when he first became president, y'all. Listen to the lineup. Listen to the lineup.
Sephardic Jew. Paul Eschleitner, Chairman, Supervisory Board, Deutsche Bank, Donald Trump's largest lender, Ashkenazi Jew. Miriam Adelson, endorser, Donald J. Trump for president, donor, Future 45-pack, finance vice chairman, Trump Presidential Inaugural Committee, Ashkenazi Jew. Sheldon Adelson, endorser, Donald J. Trump for president, donor, Future 45-pack, finance vice chairman, Trump Presidential Inaugural Committee, Ashkenazi Jew. Paul Atkins, member, President Trump's Strategic and Policy Forum, Ashkenazi Jew. Ryan Ballard, finance vice chairman, Trump Presidential Inaugural Committee, Ashkenazi Jew. Elliot Broidy, vice chairman, Trump Victory Committee, finance vice chairman, Trump Presidential Inaugural Committee, Ashkenazi Jew. Safra Katz, executive committee member, Trump Presidential Transition Team, Ashkenazi Jew. Michael Cohen, executive vice president and special counsel, the Trump Organization, Ashkenazi Jew. Gary Cohn, director, United States National Economic Council, Ashkenazi Jew. Delos Cosgrove, member, President Trump's Strategic and Policy Forum, Ashkenazi Jew. Gil Desert, president, Trump Desert Development, Ashkenazi Jew. Michael Desert, founder, Trump Desert Development, Ashkenazi Jew. Louis Eisenberg, chairman, Trump Victory Committee, finance co-chairman, Trump Presidential Inaugural Committee, Ashkenazi Jew. Boris Epstein, senior advisor, Donald J. Trump for president, Ashkenazi Jew. Stephen Feinberg, donor, Trump Victory Fund, member, Trump Economic Advisory Council, Ashkenazi Jew. Lawrence Fink, member, President Trump's Strategic and Policy Forum, Ashkenazi Jew. Alan Fishman, chairman, Ladder Capital, Donald Trump's second largest lender, Ashkenazi Jew. David Friedman, co-chairman, Israel Advisory Committee for Donald Trump, United States Ambassador to Israel, Ashkenazi Jew. Samuel Fox, vice chairman, Trump Victory Committee, Ashkenazi Jew. Alan Garten, executive vice president and general counsel, the Trump Organization, Ashkenazi Jew. Bruce Geld, endorser, Donald J. Trump for president, Ashkenazi Jew. Michael Glassner, deputy campaign manager and national political director, Donald J. Trump for president, special advisor for operations, Trump Presidential Transition Team, Ashkenazi Jew. Lawrence Glick, executive vice president of strategic development, the Trump Organization, Ashkenazi Jew. Jason Greenblatt, executive vice president and chief legal officer, the Trump Organization, co-chairman, Israel Advisory Committee for Donald J. Trump, President Trump's special representative for international negotiations, Ashkenazi Jew. Vincent Harris, former digital strategy manager, Donald J. Trump for president, Ashkenazi Jew. Thomas Hicks Sr., finance vice chairman, Trump Presidential Inaugural Committee, Ashkenazi Jew. Carl Icahn, endorser, Donald J. Trump for president, special advisor to the president for regulatory reform, Ashkenazi Jew. Gail Icahn, finance vice chairman, Trump Presidential Inaugural Committee, Ashkenazi Jew. Robert Eager, member, President Trump's Strategic and Policy Forum, Ashkenazi Jew. Travis Kalanick, member, President Trump's Strategic and Policy Forum, Ashkenazi Jew. Peter Calico, donor, Trump Victory Fund, Ashkenazi Jew. Daniel Kowalski, deputy policy director, Donald J. Trump for president, member, Trump Economic Advisory Council, Ashkenazi Jew. Charles Kushner, endorser, Donald J. Trump for president, donor, Make America Great Again PAC, Ashkenazi Jew. Jared Kushner, senior advisor, Donald J. Trump for president, executive committee member, Trump Presidential Transition Team, Ashkenazi Jew. Yael Kushner, Ivanka Trump, executive vice president, the Trump Organization, senior advisor, Donald J. Trump for president, executive committee member, Trump Presidential Transition Team, Orthodox and Jewish convert. Bennett LeBeau, donor, Trump Victory Fund, Ashkenazi Jew. Richard Lesser, member, President Trump's Strategic and Policy Forum, Ashkenazi Jew. Ronald Lieberman, executive vice president of management and development, the Trump Organization, Ashkenazi Jew. Howard Lorber, donor, Trump Victory Fund, Manchester. Donor, Make America Great Again PAC, Ashkenazi Jew. Bernard Marcus, endorser, Donald J. Trump for President. Donor, Rebuilding America Now PAC. Donor, Make America #1 PAC, Ashkenazi Jew. Rebecca Mercer, donor, Make America #1 PAC, Executive Committee member, Trump Presidential Transition Team, Ashkenazi Jew. Robert Mercer, donor, Make America #1 PAC, Ashkenazi Jew. Amanda Miller, Vice President of Marketing, the Trump Organization, Ashkenazi Jew. Eli Miller, Chief Operating Officer, Donald J. Trump for President, Ashkenazi Jew. Jason Miller, Senior Communications Advisor, Donald J. Trump for President. Communications Director, Trump Presidential Transition Team. Communications Director and Assistant to the President, the White House, Ashkenazi Jew. Stephen Miller, National Policy Director, Donald J. Trump for President. National Policy Director, Trump Presidential Transition Team. Senior Advisor to the President for Policy, the White House, Ashkenazi Jew. Stephen Mnuchin, donor, Trump Victory Fund. Member, Trump Economic Advisory Council. National Finance Chairman, Donald J. Trump for President. Executive Committee member, Trump Presidential Transition Team. Secretary, United States Department of Treasury, Ashkenazi Jew. Elon Musk, member, President Trump's Strategic and Policy.
Elon Musk. Hold on now. Hold on now. Hold on now. Oh, we got a clip. You got to get a clip right here. We got to get a clip right here. I caught the head right here and they ain't know it. Hold up. Now my shit want to freeze up. You see this shit?
Ashkenazi Jew. Samuel Nunberg, former policy advisor, Donald J. Trump for President, Ashkenazi Jew. David Horowitz, senior to the President, the White House, Ashkenazi Jew. Stephen Miller.
Then they just run a script saying Trump,
Donald J. Trump for President,
and this nigga Elon Musk, and they had no ties.
Presidential Transition Team, senior advisor to the
And
President.
this how this script started this year. They just supposed to be meeting and getting down.
Mnuchin, donor, Trump Victory Fund, member, Trump Economic Advisory Council, National Finance Chairman, Donald J. Trump for President, Executive Committee member, Trump Presidential Transition Team, Secretary,
Clip right
United
there.
States Department of
Gotta get a
Treasury,
clip right there.
Ashkenazi Jew. Elon Musk, member, President Trump's Strategic and Policy.
Y'all hear that? Elon Musk was bagging Trump when Trump first came in office, man. Elon Musk was bagging Trump when Trump first came into office, man. Then they just run a script like they just not goddamn was getting acquainted and fell out and all this old bullshit. I told you both of these motherfuckers got ties to Tesla technology. Didn't I tell y'all that? Now everybody sleep, everybody gone. Elon Musk. They just ran a script in front of the world in 2025 like these niggas just don't know nothing about each other. Families don't know nothing about this nigga bag Trump. I'm gonna hear it one more time, cause I'm clipping this. There you go.
Donor, Trump Victory Fund. Member, Trump Economic Advisory Council. National Finance Chairman, Donald J. Trump for President. Executive Committee member, Trump Presidential Transition Team. Secretary, United States Department of Treasury, Ashkenazi Jew. Elon Musk. Member, President Trump's Strategic and Policy.
Over here on the Ashkenazi side, boy. Look at Kazarian. Look at the space grill. This nigga had one of his own space grill. Big trees. See, all that bullshit, fake ass shit. The world's a script, y'all.
Ashkenazi Jew. Samuel Nunberg, former policy advisor, Donald J. Trump for President, Ashkenazi Jew. David Horowitz, Senior Vice President of Acquisitions and
Y'all seen that boy Elon Musk.
Ashkenazi Jew. Jeffrey Palmer, donor, Rebuilding America Now PAC, Ashkenazi Jew. John Paulson.
They wasn't even through. It was more than motherfucker. Man, I'm glad I played that video. I just caught that nigga.
Black Earth discussion.
I just caught that nigga goddamn Elon Musk. They just ran a script saying they ain't like they just meet and they ain't never known each other, nothing about each other, nothing.
And let's continue to clean this shit up. We're gonna go and clean up around this ice machine. You know what I'm saying? Put us one shame on cards. We ain't playing no game, nigga. You got us one time.
Oh, we gonna have to get down and talk about them blurs too.
Something that ain't. We gonna get in and get to what it is. See this cat right here?
No, we gonna get to goddamn all them blurs them niggas were putting out here. That's why them niggas on my ass.
That cat is the same cat that picked the little girl up and went around the corner, so we might as well clean that up right quick. That was not a nigga. That was not a nigga looking like me. He picked up and took around that corner. He ain't take around the corner. He sat around and he
Fuck all that. All them blurs they was putting out, that was the main thing I was on. These niggas putting that shock treatment out here. And it's coming from Grand Central Station. See, we had our own lingo. And niggas that was over here know the lingo. Know that nigga dripping was goddamn Grand Central Station. So all those goddamn blurred, photoshopped ass footages. I'm gonna show all that shit too. I'm gonna show you how I had Logic ass over here debunking everything that nigga was putting out. He went over there and started fucking that nigga in his ass and then that boy suck his dick. On my mama. I'm over there showing that nigga the blurred foot. Nigga try to put Zach in a goddamn photo in the back of them red jackets there. Try to hang a nigga in the mirror there. Make a nigga shoe fall off in the foot. All kind of shit. Had a nigga down there moving in the kitchen with a blue jacket on. Yeah, I don't remember all that shit. Damn, man. I need to go. While I start though, I go live another time. I don't need to all be too long. I want to goddamn. Trying to see what I want to do. I want to play a little premiere tonight. But I really want to tie into them goddamn to that bank to Israel owning all the America's money because they own the Swiss bank accounts, Switzerland. You know how they try to trick you. Swedish? No, not Sweden. Switzerland, bitch, with the money. You know, stop playing. Now I'm trying to see. Let me see. That's what I want to do. I want y'all down. I like y'all to hear from the horses. I like y'all to hear from their ass how they be going in on each other. That's why I like learning this shit. I gotta find this shit. Y'all ready? Somebody put an 8 in that bitch if they ready. I just gone to sleep.
Plans to be this audio book.
Cause we finna get off the tour right now. Somebody put me an 8 in that bitch. Put me an 8 in that bitch, y'all, let's go. Y'all ain't put no 8 in that bitch, let's go.
The Fort Knox Gold Scandal and What It Means to You. The author is Dr. Peter David Beater, the internationally respected political economist and financial consultant, now famous as the man who opened Fort Knox in 1974.
And I told y'all, the man who opened Fort Knox in 1974. Now I told y'all, all our gold, they bag up the U.S. currency. That's why you live off debt. The United States is built off debt. That's why they want you to come get in debt and pay your interest. That's all they want you to do. They have their own everything. I want you to get, that's all they want you to do. Then they trick you with the 10% and all that shit. But all our gold that bagged up our U.S. currency was stole out of Fort Knox, taken to Switzerland, and signed over to Israel, Ashkenazi Jews, nigga. So that's y'all keep on thinking you hold on, yeah.
Now famous as the man who opened Fort Knox in 1974. The present message was recorded March 1st, 1975. It is a sequel to Dr. Beater's earlier audio book, How to Protect Yourself During the Coming Depression and Third World War, which was recorded October 11th, 1974. Dr. Beater's credentials include 10 years as a practicing attorney in the nation's capital from 1951 to 61, 6 years as counsel to the United States Export-Import Bank from 1961 to 67, to which he was appointed by President Kennedy, and 5 years as one of the chief developers of private international business in the Republic of Zaire in Africa from 1968 to 1973. Further details on his career are given in Who's Who in the East and in other biographical books, including the Blue Book of London, England. Dr. Beter is now involved in the work of the American Patriots Committee, which he founded with other concerned citizens on August 20th, 1974. Dr. Beter welcomes inquiries and may be reached at the American Patriots Committee, 1629K, the letter K Street, Northwest, Washington, D.C., 20006. Part 1. The Big Picture. My friends, the overthrow of our great free republic, our beloved United States of America, is now far advanced and proceeding rapidly. The powerful family dynasty that now rules America behind the scenes is succeeding in its plan to bring upon us a horrendous new depression combined with runaway inflation and cruel shortages. By Election Day 1976, they plan to have Americans in a desperate situation, ready to grasp at any straw of hope. And while we are dazed and weakened, we will be invited to scrap our beloved Constitution, to accept their new one as the answer to all of our problems. If we fall into their scheming trap and accept their diabolical new Constitution, we will be forfeiting the freedoms we take for granted, consenting to our enslavement and that of our children. Oh no, you may say, we would never fall for such a thing. What a preposterous idea. It's too far out. Then I must warn you now that the dynasty has one great ally, which is indispensable to their efforts to take over America completely. I refer to that cherished belief, down deep within most Americans, that it couldn't happen here. So long as we cling to this comforting but groundless thought, we are incapable of the vigilance which is the price of liberty. We rationalize away strange and dangerous developments that take place before our very eyes. Instead of raising questions and demanding the truth from those who are supposed to be our public servants, we lull ourselves to sleep, telling ourselves, I guess what they're doing must be okay, even though I don't like it and I don't understand it. And so it is that our last elected president and vice president have been forced to flee from their respective offices to be replaced by an appointed president and an appointed vice president before our very own eyes. We have been deliberately robbed of our franchise. And dare we still say it couldn't happen here? My first audio book recording, made in October 1974, alerts you to the existence of the powerful family dynasty in America and explains how they have connived for over a century to gradually seize control of America. That message also outlines their game plan for the next several years and offers concrete suggestions on how to protect yourself. The dynasty's plans are still as I described them in my message of October 1974. But there have been important new developments. I want to make you, the American public, aware of some very significant events which have occurred over the past several months, matters about which you have been kept in the dark by the major news media controlled by the dynasty. I especially want to point out to you that there is still hope if the American people wake up in time. Some of the events lately have not been according to the dynasty's plans. As I say these words, the dynasty is scuffling to keep its balance.
They are now using all the powers at their command to keep the lid on a huge scandal, a scandal bigger than the Teapot Dome, in which the dynasty was involved, a scandal bigger than Watergate, which the dynasty brought about, a scandal so big it could stop the dynasty in their tracks if the American people find out what they have done. I refer to the Fort Knox gold scandal, the theft of America's gold supply, and the destruction of our dollar by the dynasty through their agents within our government.
Part 2.
My friends, in late December 1974, the great gold robbery was nominated by William Safire of the New York Times as one of the 4 candidates for the biggest news story of 1975. And no wonder. For one thing, making off with America's gold supply will doubtless go down in the annals of crime as the biggest theft in all of history, around $50 billion at the current market price of gold. For another thing, the alleged burglars are none other than the kingpins of America's most powerful family, people whose names would top any social register, and who are associated in the public mind with good manners and philanthropic activities. But most of all, this astronomical case of embezzlement will, unless it is corrected soon, leave America utterly defenseless against the chill wind of monetary instability that is sweeping the entire world. And herein lies the danger for the dynasty. They have made mistakes. They have left a trail. Their guilt can be proven. If their strenuous efforts to suppress the truth do not succeed, the American public will be able to see them for what they are: suave, manicured traitors who have wounded our beloved country more grievously than Benedict Arnold ever thought of doing. Here now is what has been happening. You will probably recall the visit which congressmen and newsmen made to Fort Knox on September 23, 1974, to look at America's gold stored there. This so-called gold inspection visit, which was unprecedented, was arranged by our government purely as a publicity gimmick to try to defuse my charges that the gold had been illegally removed by private interests. Only one of the 28 compartments was opened to display gold to the visitors, and that compartment was selected ahead of time by government officials. The compartment that the visitors entered into was indeed stacked from floor to ceiling with some 36,000 metal bars, but they had a noticeably reddish hue instead of the golden yellow for which gold is renowned. The reason for this odd color, my friends, is that what the visitors saw was not pure gold, that is .995 fine or better, as required for use in international monetary settlements. It was instead melted down coin gold, containing 10% copper, something known in monetary circles as junk gold. Of course, such highly impure gold does have some value in a market sense, but not as backing for currency, since no nation on earth would accept it for that purpose. Thus, for monetary purposes, and that was what the Fort Knox visit was all about, the visitors saw nothing that could be counted as part of America's alleged monetary gold hoard. A number of the visitors noticed a very apparent reddish tint to the bars, but not being gold experts, no one thought to ask about it during the news conference held afterward by Mrs. Barry Brooks, the director of the United States Mint. Thus, the Visitors' Day at Fort Knox ended in a light-hearted carnival atmosphere, just as it had begun, when the visitors chose popsicle sticks to determine their order in viewing the open compartment. Mrs. Brooks happily said, "See, it's all here," and then sent the congressmen and newsmen off on their happy way like a bunch of Cub Scouts leaving a den meeting. As for you and I at home, the dynasty's controlled major news media served up a nice pablum to swallow. A few words to the effect that Fort Knox had been visited, a few pretty but not too revealing pictures, and the comforting pronouncement of Mary Brooks that it's all here. For further reassurance, we were also informed that the gold inspection visit would be followed up by an independent audit of the Fort Knox gold by the General Accounting Office, an arm of Congress. The Fort Knox gold inspection hoax largely succeeded in hoodwinking most Americans into believing all was well at Fort Knox. But not so Europe and Canada. When the foreign reporters among the delegation to Fort Knox filed their reports, their observation of the reddish appearance of the gold led very quickly to a correct evaluation of the hoax that had been perpetrated among the American people. Financial eyebrows the world over were raised in amazement. The United States government, putting its best foot forward, had failed to display any good delivery gold. The only logical conclusion was that there was none available to show, exactly as I had charged. So transparent and blatant was the Fort Knox gold inspection hoax that for a time last fall it was a favorite topic of political cartoons and jokes in Europe. Those words of Mary Brooks, "It's all here," have been used widely by humorists in the foreign press, which largely lies beyond the reach of the dynasty, as a catchphrase for the worldwide laughingstock the United States Treasury has become. It's a sad commentary that here in America, the dynasty's stranglehold on our mass media is so complete that a phrase which is ridiculed everywhere else, "It's all here," is seriously accepted as gospel truth by many Americans. But we think it couldn't happen here. Within a month, on October 21, 1974, the General Accounting Office quickly submitted a report on its audit to the Treasury Department. There was not a word of official comment, however, until December 3rd, 1974. On that date, during congressional testimony, Treasury Secretary William Simon casually dropped what should have been a bombshell by agreeing that the gold in Fort Knox is inferior to other United States gold. That is an admission that there is no good delivery gold in Fort Knox, and as such, flatly contradicts an official Treasury document dated August 31, 1974, which shows 24 million ounces of good delivery gold in Fort Knox. And to make matters worse, even the document of August 31 conflicts with previous official documents showing 147 million ounces of monetary gold in Fort Knox, more than 6 times as much. But our major media, doing the dynasty's bidding, virtually ignored Secretary Simon's astonishing testimony concerning the poor quality of the gold in Fort Knox. What the media did choose to report, giving the public exactly the opposite impression about what was going on, was Secretary Simon's announcement during the same testimony that on January 6, 1975, the Treasury would auction off 2 million ounces of gold. Then on December 9, 1974, quietly and unnoticed by the general public, the Treasury unlawfully bought 2 million ounces of gold from the tiny Exchange Stabilization Fund, so as to have something to sell on January 6, 1975, in their effort to discredit my charges that America is gold poor. By interesting coincidence, the Treasury's purchase completely emptied the Exchange Stabilization Fund. On December 11, 1974, Mr. Thomas Wolfe, Director of the Office of Domestic Gold and Silver Operations of the United States Treasury, confirmed that the General Accounting Office audit of the Fort Knox gold had been completed as of some undefined earlier date. And yet, the news conference to release the audit, which the Director of the United States Mint had earlier promised for December 23, 1974, failed to materialize. Instead, as that date approached, the release date for the audit was suddenly delayed to January 31, 1975, without explanation. Meanwhile, I was informed through my confidential sources that the Treasury and the General Accounting Office were trying to collaborate on what to say in an audit report that would not be too dangerous to release to the American people. The audit itself, according to my sources, reveals that there is nothing left in Fort Knox except some 90,000 bars of junk gold, unfit for international monetary settlements. If this is what the audit shows, it is in complete agreement with my charges. On January 6, 1975, the celebrated auction, so-called, of United States gold was carried out. The auction had only one purpose: to fool the American people into thinking we still had gold, while in reality squeezing out one last little bit of bullion from our country. But mounting public enthusiasm over gold, combined with lingering suspicions about Fort Knox, had created a potentially dangerous situation for the dynasty, which they had to nip in the bud. They dared not allow demand on January 6th to exceed the 2 million ounces, which were put up for sale, since the Treasury then would have been expected to arrange promptly for a second auction, something they could hardly do, since there are a few ounces of good delivery gold left in America. America is gold poor. The solution to the dynasty's problem was to precede the gold sale with a 4-week blitz of anti-gold propaganda through their major news media outlets. Suddenly, the country was overrun with writers and newsmen who had become instant authorities on gold. Americans were flooded with warnings about the great gold sale fiasco, which would be expected on January 6th. Even the United States Treasury itself warned potential United States gold dealers to stay away. Thus warned, Americans gradually cooled off about gold and finally stayed away in droves on January 6th. Only 750,000 ounces was sold in Washington. And guess who bought it? You're right. 500,000 ounces went to dynasty interests, while 250,000 ounces went to a foreign group that cooperates with the dynasty. Before the auction, most of the rest of the gold had been dumped on the London market, depressing gold prices there. After the sale, Treasury Secretary Simon congratulated the bamboozled American people for their wisdom in staying out of the gold auction. Only 2 days later, those foolish few who did buy gold at the auction, namely the dynasty and their collaborators, were rewarded by seeing the value of their bullion jump by more than $10 an ounce, the biggest gain in history for a single day of gold trading. Thus, the gold auction of January 6th served the interests of the dynasty perfectly, and as usual at the expense of the trusting American public. But the problem of the Fort Knox gold audit still remained. The new release date of January 31 came and went. The audit was not released, and once again, no explanation was given. As I say these words, most Americans still don't realize what is going on. The dynasty's controlled major news media have blacklisted and boycotted the story of the Fort Knox gold scandal, and it will require great courage for any news media, even the handful not yet directly controlled by the dynasty, to break the story. But the Fort Knox scandal cover-up is beginning to come unstuck. The story has now been broken in Europe by Mr. Gordon Tether, perhaps the world's most influential financial writer, in the Financial Times of London for February 11, 1975. Mr. Tether's words speak for themselves. Quote, "Close observers of the Fort Knox mystery assure me that this, so far unexplained, official procrastination, read in conjunction with other circumstantial evidence, strongly suggests that it is no longer a question of whether there is a discrepancy between the figures and the physical reality, but what the size of the gap is. It is hardly necessary to point out that, if it does become apparent that the Treasury has itself been the seat of a scandal of Watergate-type proportions, the consequences for America in general, and her dollar in particular, could be very serious. The puzzling thing is why the administration is not hastening to demonstrate that there is no cause for concern if it is in a position to do so." Unquote. Within hours, the Tether article flushed out an odd 2-page document consisting of a report on the audit, which was quietly delivered to interested parties in Congress. Its purpose was apparently to blunt the effect of the devastating article by Mr. Tether, but as such conveys a note of desperation. It is cleverly written to give the appearance of substance, but careful reading reveals that nowhere does it give the results of the audit. A few days later, responding to steadily mounting pressure, Director of the Mint, Mrs. Mary Brooks, admitted in writing for the first time that America's gold supply consists mostly of melted coin gold, that is, junk gold. As of March 1st, 1975, the date of this message, the General Accounting Office audit of the Fort Knox gold still has not been released, even though it was completed over 4 months ago, on October 21, 1974. No explanation for the delay has been given, but my confidential sources inform me that high-level pressure from the dynasty to massage the audit is taking quite a toll. As of this moment, I am informed that one of the General Accounting Office's auditors has resigned in protest and that 2 others have refused to sign the audit. Furthermore, the resignation of at least one of the high officials ensnared in this sad drama has now been tendered, though it has not yet been accepted. As events are now progressing, the Fort Knox gold theft will in all probability be a major national scandal this year, 1975. It will implicate not only public officials, but influential people in the private sector as well. The infamous Teapot Dome scandal of the early 1920s was used by the dynasty to crush their rival in crude oil, Harry F. Sinclair. More recently, the dynasty engineered a major scandal called Watergate to crush President Nixon for their own political advancement in power. The Fort Knox gold scandal, in which the dynasty is now involved, will also crush its victims. But this time there is a difference. This time the scandal did not erupt at their instigation. The gold theft was supposed to proceed quietly, do its immense damage, and never be detected. But they have made mistakes, important mistakes, because they can be traced. And this time, it is the dynasty itself that may well be crushed by their own greedy misdeeds. If they can, if we allow them to, the dynasty will yet find a way to sidestep the crushing response to their actions and let those who have merely followed their orders be smashed in their place. We therefore dare not be complacent. If we permit them to escape the justice they so richly deserve, it is we, the American people, whom the dynasty will crush next by means of the political and economic chaos they are deliberately bringing upon us all.
Part 3. Our planned economic collapse.
My friends, I have dealt at some length with the Fort Knox gold scandal for very good reason. For one thing, it illustrates how the American people are being swindled daily by the dynasty's major news media. But that is not why I have discussed it so fully. It is also a crime, a theft so immense, so mind-boggling, that any other great robbery you can name shrinks into invisibility by comparison. But even that is not the measure of its importance. The true significance of the Fort Knox gold scandal is its pivotal role as part of the dynasty's grand design to complete their takeover of the United States of America by bringing about an economic catastrophe and turning the resulting political upheaval to their own ends. If you are a typical American citizen, you probably couldn't care less about gold bullion hidden away in government vaults, monetary affairs, and the like. To you, quite logically, money is just a medium of exchange. The gold in Fort Knox is supposed to back up our money, and that's about all there is to it. Such a monetary concept is natural, logical, and healthy. But unfortunately, that is not the way it works. The manipulation of money and its relationship to gold is a source of incredible economic and therefore political power. Centuries ago, a powerful international banker summed it all up in a famous dictum to the effect, "Give me the right to issue a nation's currency, and I care not who writes the laws." The context of his statement was not that he would thus be content with his wealth, but rather that the writers of the laws would find it necessary to do his bidding. So well did our founding fathers recognize the dangers from this source that they wrote strong provisions into our Constitution to prevent such abuses. But the dynasty that began developing a century ago in America was quick to recognize the vast power they could wield if they could cause these and related constitutional safeguards to be ignored. In my message of October 1974, I reviewed for you the emergence of the dynasty and their achievement of several major objectives that made 1913 a major turning point in our history. One of these was their successful creation in 1913 of the very thing Jefferson had warned against, their unconstitutional private central banking system known as the Federal Reserve System. In the wake of the crash of 1929 and the Great Depression that followed, Congressman Lewis McFadden, chairman of the House Banking and Currency Committee, waged a courageous campaign against the Federal Reserve that ended abruptly with his death by poisoning. Referring to the Depression, he declared it was not accidental. It was a carefully contrived occurrence. And he added that those who had brought it about, using the Federal Reserve and other means, sought to bring about a condition of despair here so that they might emerge as the rulers of us all. Few people are aware of it today, but there was a great deal of evidence to back up Congressman McFadden's charges that the crash and depression were deliberate. But as it turned out, the Great Depression, as bad as it was not quite severe enough to induce Americans to throw away our system of government, even though our republic was reduced to a very precarious condition. The American people had proven to be tougher than the dynasty expected. Their first attempt to take our country away from us had failed. And so the dynasty began a long-range plan for a second attempt at a complete takeover of America. And this time, they would leave nothing to chance. First, capitalizing on the economic woes they had created, they set in motion a wide range of social legislation to vastly increase the power of the federal government, which they dominated increasingly. They began the planning of World War II for two purposes. One was to increase the dynasty's power worldwide at the expense of certain troublesome oil rivals overseas. The other was to further vastly expand the domestic power of the federal government, dominated by the dynasty, through a wide range of wartime emergency measures which would not be undone after the war. Withholding of income taxes from your paycheck is but one example of this. Their plans for World War II worked out very well for the dynasty. The federal government emerged from the war greatly enlarged and with far broader domestic powers, and with the dynasty firmly in charge. Overseas, the dynasty's crude oil competition from Great Britain had been broken, and the sun began to set on the British Empire. America was number one, and the dynasty was number one in America. Their plan continued. They would now gradually sap America's economic strength through massive foreign aid programs and no-win wars, siphoning off America's wealth into the dynasty's coffers overseas. By the same means, they would gradually bring about internal dissension and loss of confidence among the American people. They would in every way cause our government to increasingly ignore our constitutional safeguards and then blame our resulting problems on the Constitution itself. They would prepare a new Constitution to suit their own purposes and have it ready. They would condition us for several years ahead of time to accept various things that would seem to be described in the new Constitution. They would quietly promote for years the idea that our Constitution had become obsolete. Then at last, when all was in readiness, they would once again put us through the wringer of economic depression to trigger the political changes they sought. This time, we would be a society that was already losing its way before the Depression. And this time, they would not be as gentle about it as they had been with their Depression of the 1930s. The new Depression would come with all the trimmings: runaway inflation, unemployment rising far beyond anything experienced in the 1930s, shortages, and general chaos. And that, my friends, is where we are now. Their plan is now in its final stages. Their manipulated depression has now begun. We are now being fed into the dynasty's economic wringer to be squeezed unmercifully. They have deliberately wrought worldwide monetary instability through a series of acts described in my message of October 1974. And as described in that message, the theft of America's gold by the dynasty is tied directly to the manipulations which are destroying our dollar and fueling our inflation. Thus, the Fort Knox gold scandal is not only about a stupendous crime, it is an economic Pearl Harbor by which the dynasty has declared war on the American people. Their objective in this war is our unconditional surrender by our acceptance of their dictatorial new Constitution.
Part 4. The Emerging Dictatorship.
My friends, since my message of October 1974, the dynasty's overall plan has not changed at all. But there have been some adjustments in their tactics and their timing, and others can be expected from time to time. The key revision of their timing came on December 16, 1974, on the island of Martinique, where there was a meeting between Presidents Ford and Giscard d'Estaing of France. The head of the dynasty, whose presence at the meeting was not generally publicized, agreed to allow France to revalue its gold holdings at the current market price every 6 months, but on one condition: no government shall officially repeg the gold price for an interim period of 2 years, that is, till the end of 1976. In other words, the dynasty is now allowing itself that long, instead of a year and a half, to push gold prices above $2,000 per ounce, and then peg it officially at an international monetary conference at $2,000 per ounce. Thus, as predicted in my October 1974 message, Europe is now moving rapidly back onto a gold standard. In January, France Alliance revalued its gold holdings at $170 an ounce and will apparently support gold at that price. This means that there is now a floor of $170 under gold prices. French currency is again on what amounts to a modified gold standard, and the American dollar has been devalued indirectly. Official devaluation of the dollar for the third time can be expected soon. As predicted in my message October 1974, scattered failures of major banks have occurred, chipping away at public confidence. There will be more such occurrences. The gold zoom signal given in my October 1974 message was fulfilled in November 1974. Gold prices promptly started up rapidly, but the dynasty aborted that takeoff, as I have discussed in connection with the January 6th gold sale. The dynasty has been trying both to complete their silver corner and to extract the gold from the International Monetary Fund, and have encountered more resistance than expected in both areas. They have also been trying desperately to divert attention away from the Fort Knox gold scandal. They cannot wait indefinitely, however, because their political objectives require gold prices and American inflation to be sky high by Election Day 1976. At this moment, March 1st, 1975, gold is once again over $180 an ounce. And if it stays that way for several weeks, it will signal a release of the brakes by the dynasty. After that, gold will streak for the sky, and the dollar will dive for the basement. The worldwide starvation, publicized by the Rome Conference in 1974, is a prelude to starvation in America. The dynasty can pull the plug at any time now, so be prepared. Supermarkets everywhere can be turned into wastelands within a matter of days. However, the major crunch nationwide is now planned for the fall of 1975. Nelson Rockefeller was confirmed as vice president in December 1974 and plans to be president by June 1975. Presumably, Gerald Ford will resign with a plausible explanation, such as his failure to turn the economy around. The autumn of 1975 will be a turbulent period. Major food shortages, unprecedented inflation, epidemic bankruptcies, soaring interest rates, and mushrooming unemployment. President Rockefeller, moving decisively and with great perception, will galvanize the nation by proposing that a new constitution be written to solve our problems. Quickly, a commission will be formed by President Rockefeller to start drafting a new constitution. Your suggestions and contributions will be solicited, and it will be the task of the Constitutional Commission to sort it all out into the best document possible. Soon, progress on the new Constitution will be a frequent item in the news as respected scholars and famous public officials offer their views and suggestions. Sometime during the fall of 1975, look for the following crash signal, which is the counterpart of the gold zoom signal I told you about in my message October 1974. Right now, the stock market is being held up artificially by the dynasty to save its demise for the proper moment. But when government figures are made public that show general unemployment in a range of 20 to 25%, the stock market crash will be imminent. These figures will indicate that the dynasty is ready to cut the cable on the stock market elevator and let it start its sickening plunge into the basement. 1976 will be a year of unmitigated economic disaster in the United States, with developments on the new Constitution as the only dependable bright spot in the news served up by the dynasty's media. President Rockefeller will, of course, be seen doing all in his power to contribute to this critical effort to save our democracy. In my message of October, I mentioned that red-backed currency would be coming on the scene about now, and these have now been printed, and more are being printed in $1, $5, $10, and $20 denominations, as well as in paper change denominations of 1, 5, 10, and 25 cents. It has been decided, however, not to issue them yet, but instead to wait for the peak of the inflation. They will then be introduced with a psychologically crushing reverse split, whereby you will exchange perhaps 100 green dollars for one red dollar. Because of this reverse split scheme, my suggestion contained in my message of October 1974 that you save the copper-clad coins now in circulation loses some of its value. Prior to the green for red exchange, they will be good to have and quite possibly growing scarcer. But after the redbacks appear, coins probably will no longer be officially acceptable as a medium of exchange. The exact timing of the introduction of the redbacks will depend on the dynasty's judgment of the maximum advantage it will provide them. It may well be the last straw dropped on the backs of the American people in the 1976 election campaign. One of the saddest things I have had to reveal has to do with the 1976 presidential election campaign. Nelson Rockefeller has already selected the man who will be the Democratic nominee to run against him. And it will not be any of those who are now campaigning, nor will it be any candidate in the Democratic primaries. The nominee will be a dark horse, a man who recently retired from a very visible and successful political career to devote his efforts to religious activities, such as prayer meetings for prominent politicians. At the 1976 Democratic Convention, his name will suddenly emerge as the man needed to provide America with the moral leadership it so desperately needs. Organized labor, which will have strangely refused to back any candidate up till then, will throw its full support behind him, and he will become the nominee. It will be a thrilling turn of events, and the Democratic Convention will go wild. But the stage will have been set for a truly tragic contest between moral leadership on the part of the Democratic nominee and the mess of pottage held out to a starving America by President Nelson Rockefeller. The president will have made the new Constitution the only issue in his campaign, and the people at large will be voting in a referendum during that election to either accept or reject the Constitution. The new Constitution will have been completed only weeks before the election itself, thanks to unceasing encouragement and prodding of the Constitutional Commission by President Rockefeller. Very few Americans will have had the opportunity to read or study it, and will not realize that it merely duplicates a model constitution published quietly in 1974 after a multi-million-dollar 10-year project funded by the dynasty. But no matter, we will have been hearing all about its progress for a year, and analysis by top news commentators will have assured us of its great merit. Our hearts and our souls may yearn to vote for the Democratic challenger and his moral leadership, but our empty stomachs and our crying, hungry children will convince us that we have no choice. All over America, citizens will walk into voting booths and review the names before us on fixable voting machines put there by the dynasty. Many will linger and wonder, but in the end, voting levers will decisively decree Nelson Rockefeller to be elected and the new Constitution to be accepted, under which President Rockefeller will begin a 9-year term. Someday in 1977, we will all gradually begin to wake up as we see the high-sounding phrases of the new Constitution coming to life, as a horrible Frankenstein monster smashing and destroying our treasured freedoms right and left. As a formerly free people, we will gradually become enraged at what has been done to us, and the dynasty knows it. Therefore, within a year or so after the new Constitution comes into force, that is, by late 1977 or thereabouts, the dynasty's final act of subjugation will begin, World War III. In a sense, it will only be half a world war, since it will not involve Canada or Europe. But it will be a nuclear holocaust, with the United States as the prime battleground, killing over half of our people. An official understanding has already been reached, whereby Washington, D.C., alone among major cities in the United States, will be left unscathed by the war. In return, the capitals of Russia, China, and Japan, the new axes of the 70s, will also be spared. America will make no effective retaliation, and the war will drag on for 13 months with pauses for negotiation. Coming events cast their shadow, and on February 12, 1975, Secretary of the Interior Rogers Morton said in a Dallas speech that if America were attacked right now, we could not defend ourselves. But still we say it couldn't happen here. After the war, our greatest cities will be gone, but the crude oil and other mineral resources which have always preoccupied the dynasty will still be there, accessible and waiting. And now the dynasty will have 100 million or so broken-hearted but hungry slaves to exploit these resources. A dream come true for them, but an unending nightmare for the rest of us. Yes, this is their plan. It is insane. It is inhuman. It is unthinkable to most of us. So was Mein Kampf of Adolf Hitler. But it is their plan, and it is up to us, the American people, to stop it. Talk to your neighbors, your friends, your relatives about these things. That is how public opinion spreads. and only popular awareness can do the job. To be aware is to be powerful, as the dynasty well knows. That is why they do all in their power to keep you unaware of the truth. If it is God's will, and we all do our part, we can break free of the shackles of the dynasty. If we succeed as a people in doing so, our beloved United States of America can bloom as never before, with enthusiasm, initiative, and human dignity. If we do not succeed, it is only those of us who have tried our best who will have peace in our hearts and answers for our enslaved children. Thank you, and God bless each and every one of you.